Good evening. It's 6:01. We're here at the Village Hall Boardroom for the Village Board Work Session for Monday, November 25th. It's, like I said, 6:01, and we're in the Village Hall Boardroom. Village Manager White, would you take roll call, please?
Certainly. All right. Trustee Wyka? Trustee Banoski?
Evening.
Trustee Mishler?
Here.
Trustee Briggs?
Here.
Mayor Domrance?
Here. Trustee Banoski, would you do our land acknowledgement, please?
Sure. Before we begin this evening, we would like to recognize the Seneca Nation on whose ancestral territory we are gathering. The present-day Village of Fairport sits on traditional Seneca land. The Seneca Nation, with the Mohawk, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Tuscarora, make up the sovereign Haudenosaunee Confederacy. With respect, we acknowledge the people of the Seneca Nation on whose land we now live. We honor their past, present, and future contributions to and stewardship of this land.
Great, thank you. We have some guests here this evening for the presentations for the board. From CPL, we have Dick Wade, David Hastings, and from Fisher Associates for the parking review, we have Chris Kuschel. And also, we have Superintendent Jason Kaluza, and where did she disappear to? Oh, she's in the back corner. Village Planner Jill Weidrich. And on camera, everybody say hi to Trustee Wyka, who's watching us from the Palm Coast this evening. So she's watching us on YouTube. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. And let's get started with new business and item number 1, which is the Main Streetscape design and finalization, continued discussion. And Trustee Wyka, I have your notes right in front of me as well.
All right, hello everyone.
Hi, welcome back.
Yeah, I was just looking at the calendar. I think it's been maybe 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah, we've been making nice progress. Since the last time we were in here, we've been working through the federal aid, locally administered federal aid process. We submitted plans for review. We submitted plans for review to the village and to New York State Department of Transportation. We're getting feedback. Things are starting to move forward. We're really in the final stages of final design. The previous step that we were on was advanced detail plans. The next stage is getting into final design plans, plan specs, and estimates. So we're here today to present materials that we've been working through, the landscape design, some of the bits and pieces of the project that are still kind of in the works, looking for some feedback from the village board. So I have with me today Dick Waite, our landscape architect, who's been working really vigorously on the project. And without further ado, I'll kick it off to him.
Which one is the arrow buttons? Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's see here. Okay, so sure, you do it. Last week, Jason and I met with the tree board, and we made a few revisions to the planting plan that we can show you tonight. So we can whip through these pretty quickly. You've seen this plan before. What's highlighted in yellow are trees that we changed. And after this series of slides, we'll get to the plant schedule, and we can dig into that if you want and talk about plants. The tree board was very helpful, and they recommended some changes, which we made. And they encouraged us to move towards a greater percentage of native plants, which we also did. So we're now at 100% native plants. So anyway, I think we can whip through these quickly. The trees highlighted in yellow have been revised. So you can see, I'd say probably about 2/3 of the trees we actually changed to honor their request to include a few species and to move towards a native plant palette.
Well, sorry, I just wanted to pop in real quick too, because
Yeah.
I know some of the discussion, right, was balancing out native plants and some of the concerns being on a street. So it sounds like as you were going through that, you were able to find a good balance for that then.
Yes, yeah, the objective really was to maximize the tree canopy without interfering with structures, overhead wires, buildings, because we know, shade is very important to the village. But we tried to balance those needs and find native counterparts to the exotic trees, some of the exotic trees that we had in the plan before. And just to remind the board, exotic, even though we're not including any exotics, it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's not synonymous to invasive. It just means not native. So the next slide is the plant materials schedule, and you can see in that fifth column over, nativity, everything is at least native to North America, and almost everything is native to New York State. But just a little caveat, we've included a lot of cultivars. Cultivars are cultivated varieties of plants, and they're not true natives. The species are considered natives, but cultivars, the more accurate way to represent them is a cultivar of a native plant. So you can see on this table that, they're different heights and widths, and we factored that in very carefully to maximize the tree canopy and, only put in plants that really fit, so there won't be a lot of pruning down the road and required. Any questions on the tree schedule? Yes. Starting at the top, the Amelanchier arborea is a small flowering tree. Amelanchier arborea Robin Hill, similar. Cercis canadensis redbud, Cornus florida, Prunus virginiana. There's quite a few flowering trees. Generally, the smaller trees are flowering, and the larger trees are canopy shade trees. And there are a few in there that you are definitely familiar with, like Gladitsia triacanthos shade master. That's honey locust, like you have in front of Village Landing right now. And several of these are at the request of the tree board have been added, like Ulmus americana Jefferson. That is a cultivar of American elm, which is resistant to Dutch elm disease, as is Ulmus valley forage.
I'm thrilled to see the service berries on there.
I'm sorry?
I'm thrilled to see the service berry trees on there.
Yeah, that's a great tree.
Attracts a lot of bird life and.
That's right. The berries are supposedly you can make nice pies out of them. I haven't done that. Robin Hill.
I just read a whole book on the service berry.
Great.
I really did, I swear.
But I guess you have to beat the birds to the berries.
You do.
Yeah.
That is true.
Robin Hill is a narrower variety of serviceberry. So Autumn Brilliance is sort of the gold standard, but where there's a tighter fit, I would go to Robin Hill. Anything else on the trees?
So there's a nice variety of different barks and different, shapes of leaves, and they're gonna get different colors in the autumn and things like that.
Absolutely. Different colors and different textures and different ornamental characteristics like bark and leaf color. Yeah.
That's a nice variety.
Heidi says she's also a serviceberry nerd.
Robin Kilmamore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured.
So last time we heard, we presented our hardscape strategy, and we heard that the board would like to see a few alternatives, so we have that for you tonight. This is what we showed you last time, and this is our preferred layout. The trees are more or less at 40 or 50 feet on center, and at each tree, there's a 4x8 tree grate. And then between the curb and the back edge of the tree grate, there's a 2-foot band of colored and textured concrete. And that same concrete treatment, we are extending perpendicular to the curb line off of the tree grates. And then within that framework, there's a 4x4 scored grid. 4x4 is a pretty common grid spacing for pedestrian walks. So that's what you saw last time. That's what we prefer, but following this slide are a few alternatives of this for you to consider. So the only difference here is we've removed the colored and the textured concrete perpendicular to the curb at the tree grates. So there's more of a continuous field of concrete that's uninterrupted.
Dick, can I interrupt you for a question?
Sure.
Right now, this sample is showing in front of the Village Landing. Whatever the choice is made, is that to continue all the way up and down Main Street, or is it just a specific location?
Well, we try to apply the standard to a specific location, so we would be applying this throughout the business district, but there obviously are variations. In some places, the building comes right up to the right-of-way line, in other places it doesn't. So generally, we would extend the joints to the building or whatever comes next outside of the right-of-way. And then, of course, there's an area outside of the central business district where we we move away from tree grates and we have tree lawns.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way that we laid it out is essentially Fairport Village Landing up to.
Can, Brian, can you spin the microphone?
The way that we currently have the plans laid out is this treatment would be typical for the areas where we have approximately 10 feet width from the curb line to the highway boundary, which is more or less from Fairport Village Landing up to High Street. So that would be the area that we would be looking to do this type of treatment. And then, as Dick said, beyond that, the curb lines move closer to the center of the road and it opens up to tree lawn, and we would be doing, similar to the current, we'd be doing grass with more tree plantings.
So we'll just continue on with the sequence. Here we expanded that buffer between the curb and the back edge of the tree grates to 4 feet. What this does is it just sort of articulates a subtle buffer between the main parking, the main pedestrian walkway and the vehicular realm. Just having that difference in texture and color it provides safety and it provides visual interest. So in this alternative, we were just widening that to 4 feet, and we also are eliminating that central joint, longitudinal joint on the sidewalk. So what you essentially have is 4 by 6 slabs inside the tree grates. I think we've got one more here. Okay, this one we eliminated the jointing further, so you have the essentially 8 by 6 slabs inside the tree grates, and you have a 4-foot wide strip of colored and textured concrete along the curb. So, Dave, maybe we could go back to the beginning and just run through these quickly. So this is where we started, and this is our recommendation, but we sort of whittled it down and created some alternatives for you to consider. So the next one, we eliminate the colored concrete at the tree grates. This one, we widen the buffer at the curb. And this one, we eliminate some jointing, so you have 6 by 8 slabs inside the tree grates.
I'll build just a little bit more on this. Part of what our thought process is we have 10 feet to work with from the curb line to the highway boundary, and that's really the pedestrian path.
You mean the street, right?
In the sidewalk area. So
Right, but not the street, not highway?
highway boundary is the right-of-way line on the back side of the sidewalk before it becomes private property. So what I'm referring to was we have essentially 10 feet from the curb line to where the property line is for the village right-of-way. So we were trying to figure out how best to work with this limited space that we have. The existing condition is 5 feet sidewalk, 5-foot tree lawn. And talking with Dick, knowing how walkable the village is and how many pedestrians you get, we really wanted to try to maximize the pedestrian space. So that 6 feet was really something that we pushed for, and all of these alternatives are still achieving that. One of the other things that you think about is just the visual impact. With the change in material, this really gives you a 6-foot standard concrete and 4 feet of the stamped concrete. And if you were to do a 2-foot pattern, it just visually kind of opens up a little bit more. You have to walk around the tree grates, but it feels like it gives you a little more space.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is there any concern about having more of the breaks, or, I mean, they're not breaks, but they're seams, like in terms of like cracking and the winters, and is there?
No, there's not. That's generally, that's viewed as a preferred for pedestrian pavements to have more scoring than less.
Oh, okay.
So vehicular, utilitarian pavements often are scored at like 8 feet centers. But more scoring is generally seen as a good thing.
Okay.
And these are control joints, so they're only, the cut is only made about 1/4 of the depth of the slab. So it just controls cracking. It doesn't, there won't be heaving at these joints. And what you don't see here is we also were proposing a picture frame finish. So there'd be, in addition to the control joint every 4 feet, there would be like a 2-inch tooled frame around each 4x4 piece of concrete to give it a nice finished appearance.
Yeah, and I will say our plans are working very diligently to try to pass along this information, so when the contractor's forces are out there, they know what to do. In a perfect world, everything is evenly spaced and perfectly symmetric, but we're going to have to work with intermediate driveways and access areas. So this will be the gist of what we are pushing forward, and then working with the contractor to try to keep the joints evenly spaced, like from tree to tree, like Dick had said. The target is 4 feet, but if we work with the contractor to measure the distance, they can figure out what the spacing needs to be even and get you close to 4 feet.
Was there another one before this one?
Yep.
There was, yeah, okay. Oh, right, the shading.
Why don't you just go through them?
The
Choice
shading.
1,
What-
choice 2.
Tell me from a design perspective, the shading in the tree grate area, what, it's a preference thing, correct? There's no other,
Right, it's absolutely right. It's
Okay.
just aesthetics. It helps to integrate the pavement design with the tree grates, and it breaks up the concrete a little bit, so you don't have an undisturbed view of concrete going on indefinitely.
it was funny because when we looked at this last time, I was thinking that maybe more of a seamless look did look better. So I think I was the one that was actually questioning, should we have the shading throughout, or should we not have the shading throughout? And now that you put both, I kind of think I like the shading. So,
Great.
but you gotta see it, so.
Yeah,
So
great.
thanks for giving us these choices.
You're
So,
welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate
we
that.
do prefer this one here, but obviously, we want you to get what you want.
So, Brian, to try and get some kind of feedback on this, would you like each one of us to just say, my first choice would be this one and my second choice would be this one? And you can kind of keep track of that, and
Sure, whatever you
that-
guys prefer.
is that helpful?
It is, but ask any questions you have on this, what you're thinking, what it is. I think last time we were here, pardon my voice, Jason talked about, what is that texture or shading going to look at visually? And we talked briefly about, looking at that kind of a very, very light slate finish to it, just a little bit of a darker gray than what you're gonna have with the regular concrete, trying to stay away from the yellows and reds of the world that kind of fade out. And also our big thing from a maintenance perspective is to be able to, it's not if, it's when we have to replace concrete walks, dig into there, replace a lateral, whatever. We can replicate what's there and make it look like it's always been there versus something that looks very patchy and so forth. So that's what we were looking at with those shaded areas. I think is that a correct statement, Jason?
That's accurate. The day after we finish this project, someone's
It's going to happen.
lateral will collapse and it'll be torn out and have to be replaced. So
It's going to happen a lot, and we want to make sure we can duplicate. So it doesn't look like it's never going to look the same after the first day it was installed. So. And I think by the time you do this, it looks artistic. It's got some color. It's got some texture. Breaks it up. It really looks clean and fancy. This is a design you'll see in a lot of different types of places if you're walking around various hardscape areas and communities. And the time you pick out a really nice, eclectic, I'll try to sway you toward the one I like for the tree grate. It's going to look really, really nice, And by the time you put all your light posts in there, and and you do the really nice street signage, and you have your flags or your banners that you put up. I mean, you got to look at it holistically with all the goodies and stuff that come with it. It's going to look really good. There's going to be a lot going on. It's going to be fun and exciting and jazzy. I'm excited for it because we're planning on doing that, flags and banners and ornaments and lighting and flowers in the summer as well. I mean, these poles are going to be, I hope they get ratings for a lot of weight because I see a lot of things happening on them. It's going to be nice. But all that's going to come as part of this project. So don't think it's just this is what you see. It's going to be broken up with all of that to really add to the sight lines as you're looking down the street.
Do you all feel like you can make a choice, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, why don't I just go down? Adam, what's your first and second choice?
I think from a first and second choice, I do alternate 2 as the first choice, alternate 1 as the first. Reason I like alternate 2, I like the simplicity of it. It's easy to just move forward. I also find the 2-foot wide slate texture more convincing than a 4-foot wide slate texture. For just some of the reasons we mentioned in the last meeting. If you're going to fake it well. Not to say that you don't see 4-foot slate. It's just for me. I think that's where it's going. But I think there's that. But if we want to do a pattern, that's fine. I just like the simplicity of it.
So this one is the same as the first one. It just doesn't have the tree gate buffers going up and down.
That's correct.
Just so the board's aware of the difference.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think to me it just visually might look like a little bit of a ladder going down. One question I did have too, we mentioned about the light posts. The base on those, how big are they? Where would they be on this plan, right? Because am I going to say, okay, we'll do this 2-foot strand, and then we're just going to have to fit a concrete pour around it?
The tree layout has been worked around the lights. We got the light layout from Fairport Electric, and you don't see the lights here, but we have accommodated them. So generally, the lighting would be on a similar spacing as the trees, but halfway in between the trees. So there's minimizes the conflict between limbs and the lights.
Great. Will they have a pedestal, or I'm trying to remember the design offhand.
Yeah. Well, we're going to conclude with that tonight.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said 2 was your first choice, 1 is your second choice.
Yes.
Okay. Heidi had 2 as her first choice and 1 as her second choice. I have it the other way around. I have 1 and then 2. Emily, what?
Adam, you were saying that you think it's more realistic to have a 2x2 slate, if you will, and it's more.
The 2x4.
Sorry, the 2x4 is obviously more realistic.
I believe it a little bit more.
It looks more authentic.
Yeah, it's my eye. I would look at it and I'd say like.
So you're saying with the first one, the larger shaded slates wouldn't be super realistic because
Or
that's
I
not
think-
the,
The first and the second one are exactly the same.
Right.
The only difference is, is there is some colored concrete that
Right.
goes.
right.
The
yeah.
4x4.
Right.
Other than that,
But you're saying the 4x4 isn't quite as realistic
I-
looking?
For me, if I saw it that frequently, okay, my mic is on, sorry. For me, if I saw it that frequently, my eye would start going, well, hold on. Is, how real is this? And then I'd start looking at it a little bit harder. That's all. And then to me, it would,
And we have gone with the decision of doing the slate stamp, correct? That is,
that's what we're recommending
Okay.
we do if we're gonna do a colored
okay.
and give some texture to it. Again, it's something that we can do, we can replicate. We're not buying batches of colored or other types of different concrete. It's something we just buy concrete and then we just do the finishing touch on it
Yeah.
when it's installed. And it looks really good. It's got longevity.
then-
It doesn't cause an issue with snow and salt and
Because the slate stamp and then the colored concrete are butting right up against the tree grate, I think it's really important to think about how the tree grate and the color that's chosen for that concrete, how well they complement each other, because they are obviously like coming right up against each other.
I think it's just cement colored, cement the stamp.
But it's tinted, correct? It's dark.
yeah,
So
so
I'm
the-
just saying, like, the tint should visually complement the color of the tree grate that we just choose.
well, the tree gate will be a precast material that will kind of rust, I believe, and that sort of thing. So,
Right, but you showed us some different, like, colors or something, right?
right, I don't know if those are rusted out, but we're not buying stainless. I know that, right? We're buying everything precast.
Are we
so
doing,
I got scared with money. No, so they were
They're all
just
gonna be the
newer,
rust.
but they will have a rustier look like all tree gates will.
right?
Now,
Which
obviously,
I think
the-
is a cool
Patina.
look.
It looks really nice. It's got a
yeah,
patina to it.
yeah,
Now, the more you walk on it, when they're in a really active area like this, that patina kind of wears off, and it does look a little more darker colored
I
or
like
metal
I
color.
like the patina. I think it looks great.
It does look good,
Yeah.
and it's just it just looks like natural aging, like it belongs there,
Okay.
But that's the precast material that's going to happen there.
Okay.
would you say it looks great? I'm sorry,
You had to do it. Okay, I think I agree with Adam. I think that number 2 is my first choice. Yeah, no, not that one. Yeah, that one I think is my first choice. Can you go to 3 again? Yeah,
This is one.
yeah.
This is two.
I feel like I'm at the eye doctor.
3,
Yeah.
which has got the 4-foot buffer and the longer longitudinal
Yeah, I don't like
pieces.
No.
And then this has just a
No.
bigger.
Okay, so I
spacing.
agree with Adam. And I think Heidi. 2 is my first, 1 is my second.
All right, I'll slash your tires when we get out in the parking
Oh,
lot. It's fine.
jeez.
Stop. Trustee Briggs, what would you like to put down as your choices?
My first choice, and I decided when I was home, my first choice is actually number 2, and then number 1 is my second choice, but I could live with either. But I like number 2 better. Personally.
Okay,
Great.
moving on.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So tree grates, I think last time we showed you several options for tree grates, and we have a recommendation for you here from the options we gave you last time. And that would be this one. This is a 4x8 tree grate by Urban Accessories. It's actually installed in three pieces. There's a 4x4 central piece and then a 2x4 piece at each end. And it's supported by the curbing and the concrete around it. And it's high heel friendly and it allows water to get through. And you can see in these photos that you will achieve that sort of rusty finish over time. So that's our recommendation. But we have, there's others certainly to choose from. Urban Accessories has a nice selection of 4x8 tree grates. Yeah. Fan was probably my second choice, followed by the first one, and then these others I liked less. This seems pretty contemporary. I think in Fairport I'd go with something a little more traditional. And there was some discussion about uplights too. If the village wants uplights. Okay, no lights.
Are you ready? I think so. Okay. Adam, go first. We'll make Adam go first every time.
Wow.
Pick two. What's number one? What's number two?
I mean, I actually, I think I agree right down the line on this one.
So that means, which one is
One,
first?
Two. I mean, like, I'm
Kiva is your first choice?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second choice is,
No, you know what? I think I like either that one, and then three.
Coho.
Yeah.
Okay.
Contemporary one is, the contemporary one is intriguing to me, but I think I might agree with you, Dick. It's nifty. I don't know. I wouldn't be devastated if that one got one though too.
You only get to pick two. You picked Kiva and Coho, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to keep moving on. Heidi had Jameson as first, which is the very modern one. She had Kiva and Coho after that, but Jameson was her first choice. And then Kiva and Coho was number three. It fell off the list. For myself, I will say Kiva and Coho.
Kiva. What's your second choice? I don't have one. I'm just kidding. I guess Coho, but I like Kiva the best.
Trustee Briggs, it's all up to you.
I did put some thought into this, a lot of thought into this. If it were to be a circle, I would go with Kiva. And I really like circles. They tend to be playful and they can mimic nature and they kind of radiate some energy. But my first choice would probably be Boston. I love a square. I love the simplicity of it. A square also is very calming and classic, and it has a very strong and traditionally through arts and through math. I mean, it has stability, security, comfort, and I really love the repetition that you get from repeated squares, especially as you're walking down. They create a nice rhythm, and I think it's really classy. And since we started the streetscape, I've been walking around, and now all of a sudden you start noticing things in every community you're in. Kiva is absolutely everywhere. You know, I think it's like the number one go-to. So as communities out there, I've seen it in the Adirondacks, I've seen it, it's everywhere. So going with, the village that's got a 200-year history, why don't we do something a little different? Stand out a little bit. And again, just a really classic, clean look, end to end, repeating the squares. And I like the ambiance that it would also create with strong, calm, stability. So if anyone wants to rethink, maybe looking at a square or get that Boston back up there. I mean, we do have an old community. And it would be balanced, not having only squares. It would definitely be balanced with the curves of your other features. The lamp posts, the benches.
I went square. I like the other one though.
Oh,
Unfortunately, sorry.
but
I do like the shape, the circle shape, with it being a tree and the tree canopy being round, so I feel like it just carries that. But I hadn't thought of Boston in the way that you're thinking of it, so thank you for opening my mind.
Be unique, right?
Good
We're
argument.
gonna have them 30 years. Let's not be like every other community that's got tree grates.
Okay. So that's a very good argument.
Is the
Yes,
size of
it's
the
a little
opening is
bigger.
larger, right? So would there be less maintenance that would be required in terms of like expanding when the tree grows, or with the larger opening?
Some grates do. These do not appear to be expandable, the opening of the hole.
Is
These
that-
are,
Would that be an issue with the
I'll have-
Kiva?
Say it louder. Oh, no problem.
No, I mean, seriously though, is there a benefit to having a larger opening for the tree to grow with the Boston?
well, some tree grates they have knockouts where you can
Okay.
expand them to create room for the tree. These, the urban accessories appear to be just providing a bigger hole in the beginning so the tree grate doesn't have to be messed with. And then also you would probably have smaller trees in the tree grates than you would in the tree lawns, right? Like the London plane trees and red oaks, you're not really going to be putting them in tree grates. So the idea would be to make sure that the hole is large enough to accommodate the tree proposed for it, or get a tree grate that is expandable.
May I see the Kiva one more time, the side, like the opening? The Kiva.
Well, is
The
it,
size
actually, I was
of the
gonna say real quick,
opening.
are those openings defined, or do you say, here's how big we need them to be?
No, they're defined. It's based on ADA compliance and being high heel friendly.
Oh, I'm sorry, the opening where the tree would go.
Oh, that is off-the-shelf dimension.
Okay,
I can't read that from here, but I think that's like, I think that's
It's a foot and a half.
foot and a half, 18 inches. So
Yeah.
the trees, most of the trees we're specifying have a DBH of 2 to 2.5 inches. So that would, allow for many years of growth before there was ever an issue.
and then at that point, do you just buy another one of, like this design, and just has a larger circle, or you find a different product?
You 100% can, and even if it isn't necessarily meant to be expandable, I see it all the time where local forces will take the tree grate up and take an angle grinder to just take one more ring backwards. If it's very common.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for the last comments. Trustee Mishler, do you want to keep the choices that you made?
I would say Kiva, and I would say second choice Boston.
Okay.
So I didn't have a second choice really when I first voted.
So mine was Kiva and Coho. Yours was,
Kiva and Coho.
and Heidi's was Jameson and Kiva. And Boston Kiva. So. You don't get a vote. Okay. How about if we move on to the next item?
Okay. So next we looked at where furniture, pedestrian amenities might go along the corridor. And just to note that we only have 10 feet inside from the face of curb to the right of way. And that really doesn't accommodate benches. If you try to put a bench in that 10 feet, it will really obstruct pedestrian traffic and/or be in a place where it's dangerous, right? Where you wouldn't want to sit so close to parked cars and such. So they're really, within the right of way, there's not a great place for benches. Trash receptacles, they could be located in a variety of different places. Right now, I've seen a bunch that are sort of next to light poles. that can work, but benches, not so much. And same with bike racks. They take up an even bigger footprint than benches. But we have identified some locations just outside the right-of-way where some seating niches might be located. And so
Yeah, I just want to build off of that a little bit. So with the federal aid project and the right-of-way constraints that we have, we are limited in how much we can do. With the design of the project, the landscape design, the hardscape layouts, lighting locations, tree selections, there are some locations where, as Dick said, street furniture is best suited outside of the right-of-way, outside of where we can work within the bounds of this project. So we really wanted to take this one step further and not just say, this isn't our job, not our problem. We wanted to just put a little forethought into the project. So some of this is going to be follow-up after the project that will, kind of work up some plans with the village. So there's not too much to decide on this. This is offering up some information to chew on as this project moves forward.
Help me let me make sure I'm conveying this back to you correctly. That while bike racks and benches and trash receptacles aren't really in the scope of this project as we're putting it together to send it out to bid, it is likely to be a secondary project after this is done to go back through and determine locations and benches and bike racks, that we're not skipping them, but it's more of a next step after we do the initial work. Is that close?
Yeah, and we can do what we can within the project, and this will be a discussion. We've been talking about this with Brian and Jason, what we can do as part of the project and what would be ideal but not achievable as part of this project. We'll make sure that at least a plan is in place on paper so that it can be pursued further in the future. There are opportunities to install benches and bike racks if we go that route. But it's also one of those things, prioritizing the project is one of the themes that we had talked about in the previous presentation last time we were in here. There's some high priority components of the project that we're pushing hard to make sure that we get in. It's the upgrades to the hardscape, the trees and the street lighting, and benches, bike racks, trash receptacles are low-hanging fruit to pursue in the future if we run into space or budgetary constraints.
Is that what it is, more of a budgetary constraint?
It very much is going to be in the discussion. As we're heading into the final stages of this project, we have a detailed cost estimate that I'm going to be working through with these guys to sharpen our pencils on what the priorities are. Now that we have an idea of what we want to install in the project, we have estimated how much we think that'll cost, and it is currently above the available budget. So now it is the decision-making time for what we want to prioritize.
Which is the cheapest tree grate?
Boston. Is there a cost difference between these tree grades? Like a significant cost difference? Do we go with Boston? No, I'm just kidding.
no,
Yes,
there's not.
we do.
But there are cheaper tree grades. You can get plastic ones if you like.
Okay.
No, thank you.
No, we're not doing that. Okay.
Well, let's see what the ideas are for this.
Sure,
and
Yeah.
then-
sure.
And then we'll come back to this
Okay,
conversation.
well, this
I just
slide-
wanted to make it clear, like, this isn't the end of the conversation, that there's more conversation to be had.
But
and
thank
more-
you for clarifying.
and
Oh,
more
yeah, they're
decisions
not
to
in
be
the
made.
budget right now.
We're just not gonna be doing this in this particular part of the project.
It's such a huge corridor that we're trying to do. This was our concern from the get-go, and we've been talking about it, and, you could do a lot if you want to go spend $30 million like a Lake Placid, and, for the 3/4 of a mile on both sides of the street, the scope, the project zone, if you saw, is massive, what we're trying to do here with a measly $5 million. And trying to get it all in, and we were talking about every piece of furniture is $2,000, every bench is $2,000, every receptacle is $2,000. You buy 50 pieces and you're at $100,000. So if we can do it, and we can do it, I think we can always add these things later. I think it's important to have these types of amenities on the street and bike racks, and I'd like to do some custom things we've talked about and make them look really cool. as long as we have some space to put those in, strategically place them, I think we should do that and plan for those types of amenities if we can't do it within the confines of the grant and the bond that you guys are about to issue. So I think it's really important to consider that type of work.
So in this slide, the dark black line, that's the highway boundary. So there's about 10 feet between the face of curb and that line. And those brown rectangles, those are 6-foot benches. That's a pretty standard size for benches. And you can see if you try to squeeze that in either parallel to the curb or perpendicular, you would really be blocking pedestrian circulation quite a bit. So it's problematic to try to get benches in, and even more so with bicycle racks. You can see there's some bike racks. They take up a considerable footprint.
Sorry, just real quick.
Yeah.
We keep calling this a highway. Is that because that's how it's classified by the state?
Yeah, that's the terminology that New York State DOT uses. The property line is the highway boundary, the right-of-way line, that is the limit, that is the highway that the municipality owns, and beyond that becomes private property.
All right. So it's a street, but it's a highway according to DOT.
So with that said about the amenities, there are opportunities just outside the right-of-way or the highway boundary where things could be located. And that would be easiest where the village already owns property, such as right here. And the village already has benches there. There's room for more. You could get a couple of benches and a trash receptacle and some bike racks in there. That's an obvious niche to locate some things. We're moving from south to north on the west side of the road. Here's another little niche in front of Village Landing. In each of these slides, there's a photo of the location in addition to the plan view drawing of it. So you could see here, you could take away some of that planting and locate the benches against that wall, or you could even put them in front of that planting. But wherever it's privately owned, you would need to have a grading easement to do this. So that's another opportunity up here at Kennelly Park. There, you can see there's a bike rack there. There's plenty of room for a bench and a trash receptacle or a bike rack there. Moving further up, this is in front of Ricky's Family Restaurant. There's already a bike rack there. There's certainly room against that brick wall to locate a couple of benches and some bike racks.
We may need to shift the bike racks. I think that's where their door is it not?
No,
Because I know it shows on the corner, but it's actually.
Yeah, there's some room beyond the door between, pretty sure, but maybe I made a mistake there. I'm pretty sure there's room on both sides of the door for amenities.
Right. Well, either way, it shows we have space. We
Right.
can figure it out.
Right. And then in front of the village parking lot, there's another location there where you could locate some stuff, maybe as many as 4 benches or 2 or 3 benches with a trash receptacle. I believe this is village property just south of the railroad that I believe there were plans for possibly a future parking lot or something back there. I don't know how.
But does the village own that piece, or does someone else?
Out past the highway boundary, it's owned by private property.
Okay,
Got
well, if
Skip it.
it's a possibility there, and you would not have to preclude getting cars back there either. You could locate a couple of benches like this and still get vehicles back there, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. This is by Thomas Creek. There's a little niche there now that could be, by my estimation, there's room for a couple of benches there and a trash receptacle. And this is in front of the cannery. Again, most of these sites have already been utilized because they are the opportunity spaces. There's room there for 2 or maybe even 3 benches in front of the cannery. And This one seems out of place.
No, we're back to the beginning.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
east and bottom.
Oh, we're going east side from south to north, okay. Yeah, at the Village Hall, there's a great opportunity there to expand that little sitting niche. I think a couple of benches flanking the pavement in front of the steps would be nice. Here in front of the Village parking lot on the east side, again, this is Village land already. You could simply put in some bench pads just outside the right-of-way. This is in front of Lombardi's. You can see there's the store owner there has some planters out there. There's an opportunity for benches there. And now I'm going to hand off to Dave to talk about street signs.
Can I ask a question that, did you send us pictures of what it's gonna start, like, because it starts down at the corner, right? It starts at, the streetscape actually starts beyond Church Street. Right. Is there anything that's going on in there as far as trees or plants or sidewalks and all of that?
At the northern end and the southern end, we have tree lawns, and then we transition to tree grids when we get closer to the center of the village. That was included on the tree plans.
I didn't see.
Yeah,
Just new
I've got the whole thing here. I
construction,
can
Yeah, the new construction
scroll
in
back
front
to-
of Fairport Savings and Loan, or what it's gonna look like down by the corner. I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah, so this is the Church Street intersection, and this is kind of where the project starts. As we get into detailed design, we're still sharpening our pencils a little bit, but this is kind of the gist of the project limits. We were capturing approximately where the tire shop is and the gas stations, the driveways, kind of starting there and then moving north. On these plans, there are two existing trees that we're going to retain on the southeast corner. And then moving north, it's a mix of existing trees to remain and proposed trees to be planted.
So, but we're gonna have the grasscape all the way up to Village Landing?
Yeah, so it's, you can kind of see on this, it's a little zoomed out, I can't zoom in. But at the entrance to Fairport Village Landing, we basically have grass that comes up to that intersection. And then north of that is where we would start the hardscape treatment that we were talking about in the four alternatives. That's where things really narrow up. The curb line pushes further away from the center of the road, gets closer to the,
Oh, I was just making, Fairport Old Savings and Loan, and then there's the coffee shop going in there. It's just that huge hunk of cement now. But you're actually gonna bring green space all the way up and around that building. So where there is concrete now, we're gonna put in trees and grass.
Yeah, it had been identified that with that property development, that the very large driveways that are there now are no longer needed.
Right.
All access is going to be coming in. So it only made sense as part of this project to make it what it needs to be moving forward. So we're going to be pulling all that grass out, all that concrete out. We're going to be replacing the curb across the front of that, bringing it back up to full height curb. Yep.
I think that's a great enhancement right there. That it's got a lot of, a sea of cement.
It was awful, and that step that was put there for whatever reason, it all goes away. Trees are planted, grass.
And I did try lately walking around and finding trees that aren't going to be affected, that are big trees. And there's some wonderful trees along the side of the old bank that will stay. Those will stay, and there's a couple on the east side up there too. But I think bringing that grass all the way down into the middle is a great addition. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where we, in discussions with the tree board, had gone back, reevaluated, tried to really determine trees that are in good condition can be retained, and we could work around with construction activities. It is going to be a challenge with all the conduit and lighting services, but that's an area that we can. And then moving north of Fairport Village Landing is where we had identified it's just impractical to try to retain existing. With all of the changes that we're doing to the curb line tree grates, really need to start with a fresh palette there.
Well, thank you, I just wanted to
Does the
make sure.
tree lawn pick back up anywhere past the north side, like towards the cannery? Where does the tree
Sure,
lawn pick back up?
let me work our way right through. So
Okay.
I got up to the railroad tracks. This next slide is
Okay, here, yeah.
High Street and Parse Ave.
Yep.
And it's essentially Parse Ave is where
Yep, the
that
tree lawn.
hardscape treatment ends, and it picks back up to grass through the rest of the corridor.
What's there now?
Grass. Yeah, and this mimics a lot of what's out there now. South of High Street, there is some grass. Like the property owner on the southeast corner of High Street had indicated his preference to remove the grass as a maintenance hazard. Plus, we had identified it was a prime opportunity for a hardscape treatment. The thought process being all of the parking that's available in the OSED lot on the east side of the street. I know you guys put up the yard signs to try to encourage people to go up to the traffic signal and cross at the safe location there. If we can keep a consistent hardscape treatment, it might just draw people's attention over to the right where we would prefer them to cross.
Yeah, it's worth noting, I mean, there's gonna be almost 100 trees on the main street when this is done, where right now you have 59. That's a substantial increase, and really trying to maximize every space to get that canopy and get some new growth in there and some greenery into a very hardscaped concrete brick veneered type downtown. So I applaud you guys for trying to maximize those spaces. That was something we told them day one, is like maximize every space we can to put some color and put some landscaping in.
What has been the final decision there about the entrance to the cannery? Or keeping it?
Oh, what?
The driveway modification that we
Exactly.
proposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still moving forward with the original plan. Right now, it's two different types of driveways.
Yes.
The southern one is the curb radially returns into the parking lot, and as you're passing by, kind of looks like a side street at a quick glance. And the next driveway north of that is a traditional driveway with an apron with sidewalk that carries across it. So we really wanted cohesion between those two driveways, and it made the most sense to turn the radial one, shrink that down in size to be more appropriately sized for what the unit is now. It's not as industrial as it was. And build new sidewalk across the driveway, bring it up to grade. We did the engineering analysis to determine what the elevations were, if we're trapping water, if we have to do any drainage. So we've identified this is actually a pretty easy installation. We can do this modification and get the sidewalk across and match the look and feel of the adjacent driveway.
Was there, I'm sure there was, let me rephrase that. There was no finalization, though, of turning that into a one-way, in one, out the other.
We haven't been in discussions with the property owners about
Okay.
going that far. So far, it's just been the operation of the driveway, the geometric properties of it.
I think that was originally recommended.
Originally a discussion when they were in front of the planning board back in
Right.
2018.
And they could still do it, but it's private property, so we don't get to change that. But that is something that was even brought up at the meeting that Jill and I had with the property owner not too long ago about it. And he was like, we can always make, we looked at changes to make parking easier and the flow better and going in one
Sure.
lane out the other versus always having two competing cars trying to go against each other in both those lanes. It gets very tight. So the property owner is aware of that and might make that change in the future. We might recommend it as well,
Okay.
too.
I would recommend making the change.
You don't own it.
I know I don't own it, but.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I can roll into the last part of the conversation tonight. Ornamental street signs. As part of the project, street signs is part of the streetscape that we have control over with the federal funds and the implementation of the project. The standard street signs, stop signs, one-way parking, those are all the standard signs that we have to install. Can't deviate. They're part of the part of the standard federal guidance on street signs. We can go a little bit further and do decorative signposts with decorative bases and finials and frames and try to class things up as much as we can. We're currently in talks with New York State DOT to make sure that we're all on the same page with what's going to get installed. The one part of the project that we have been looking at feedback from the village on is ornamental street name signs, placemaking, taking it one step further, signs that we actually have some control over, doing something other than standard. So just this last slide here, we had been working with a vendor that was able to do some mock-ups for us, and these are some of the ideas that had been presented to us. We were curious what the village's take has been on what's been presented, kind of just the options that are out there, and placemaking and the choices with signage and names. Really looking, this is an open book. This is where we're looking for some feedback.
You know,
I've
like,
got some.
go ahead.
I do like on some of the signs, I think, the very first one that says South Main has that little curve on the top. I kind of like that. I don't know if we would put it everywhere, but I like that. I'm not sure I like the word Fairport, because the on the Erie Canal and stuff gets really small. I don't know if we would want to go with a symbol and not a word on a word. You know, it's a sign, but we're putting a decorative word on it. But I think we could maybe do the lift bridge graphic or something up in there that would not be a word. So I did like that shape. Any of the fancy poles I like. I thought the finial on the last, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, I think the finial, the top piece on 3 or 4, I'd like better than the little thing, that little pointy. I don't like points. But either the circle finial, I like a nice finial. The last base, number 4, is really chunky. I like that. But any of them that have a decorative element at the bottom, I would definitely go with, bringing in that curve, since I was going for Boston. Bringing in that curve. I like the frame around the word, the street name. However, 3 and 4, I don't like the scallopy stuff and the split stuff or anything else. I really like kind of clean, classic, end-to-end, you know, just get rid of, not adding any more visual clutter out there. You know, just have a nice, beautiful, clean, uncluttered 3/4 of a mile.
I agree, and it looks nice with the South Main, where it's got the black behind the red sign on 3 and
Yeah.
4, but just get rid of the curly Q doodads or whatever. But otherwise, it looks really clean and classy, and gives it something that says, "Hey, you've arrived somewhere," and it looks good.
Yeah, don't like to do that. And, my last point, as much as I love red, I love a nice pop of red, and you've always shown these in red, I'm not sure I want red for the village. It kind of says school to me, you know, and Fairport schools have all the red stuff. So maybe if they had it in a blue.
They do, and that's an interesting point, because with the feedback that we just got from our submission to New York State Department of Transportation, they give us some feedback on the palette of colors that they typically install, and they had been leaning towards red is not a normal color for them, but blue is. So we might actually steer the conversation towards blue.
Yeah, it's just the school branding is so strong in Fairport and Parrington, and with an F and all of that, it just kind of says school to me. Or red is stop signs. Let's just steer away from that. So, but I would do a blue and not a black.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my feedback. I did my homework.
I would say that the blue also would match the entrance signs that we have at our gateway, the new signs that they're blue. So that would be, you know.
Unified.
So, yes, yeah. I know that the the larger base is gonna be more expensive, right? As we're moving across that, probably the last one, the fourth one is probably the most expensive, the base being large, the finial being.
Yeah.
So I really prefer number 3 and 4. But from a cost perspective, I would be completely happy with number 3, minus the curls. Don't like the curls.
Yeah, and it's another interesting part of the signs on the right versus the sign on the left. The signs on the left are stacked on top of the pole, so they kind of go in a
Right,
crisscross.
I like that they,
And the ones on the right would be hanging off. Yeah, it's a little easier to, like, we've been pursuing putting frames on signs that can have frames within the center part. And I'll build off of the terminology that Dick was using, the business district, which is really like the hardscape area where we're doing that decorative treatment from Village Landing up to Parse Ave. Those would be the locations where we'd prioritize putting in the ornamental posts with bases, where we have space and they'll fit. And then the choice of the signs, and we have a lot of room to work with here.
Anything else? Okay, I like blue. I like number 3 without the curly cues, and I like number 1. My only question, I'm looking at you, Jason, how much does it cost when one of those gets hit by a truck? Versus the plain.
The decorative bases are more expensive. With as often as we replace them, I think go with what your heart says. It's not that often.
Okay.
And when they are hit, half the time we're able to capture the person's insurance.
Okay. I'm just trying to be realistic in terms of what happens on Main Street here.
So it does happen, and we do replace them. I think it would be something
They
that
send
we
you a
have,
bill if you trash
and we maintain stock of.
Okay, so for me, I'm gonna say 3 without the curly cues and 1. And Heidi she has quote numbers. So do you know what the numbers are on those? She has 24073.
Yep, it's the top right corner of the image on the screen, so that's on the right, 3 and 4.
Okay, she has that one, and then the next one she has 22544.
Yep, that's the one on the left. So sounds like the signs on the right prioritized over the signs on the left.
Okay, and then she has 21167. I just
That-
don't know what these other 2 numbers are for.
That was probably
Were they some other ones?
that was probably the previous one that we had submitted, kind of building off of the last time that we were in here.
Okay.
We
So-
had reached out for more
I
selection.
would put it, she likes the ones on the right first. She doesn't say minus the curly cues, but I think everybody else here says minus the curly cues. And then she liked the ones on the left, second best. On to you, Adam.
I don't mind the curly cues. I'm gonna. It makes me think of fun places in different neighborhoods and cities that I've been, or little towns and villages. That being said, I think in general I agree with all the other comments that have been made. In particular, the related to having a more ornamental base. But as I'm looking at it too, and I'm glad you kind of touched on it, I think there's an opportunity here to almost create a hierarchy, right, of the intersections, which is another layer of placemaking. When you identify like the main intersections that are there, I think we have an opportunity to maybe in some ways even mix some of these elements up, right? Is it possible to have like how we have the frame around the signs on the right, is it possible to merge that idea with the signs on the left? And so then you have that at some of the secondary or the tertiary intersections. So we have a similar language that's happening there, and you have the similar bases. And then you start to kind of communicate where some of the the main intersections are. Is that kind of what you were conveying?
Yeah,
with
there's
that, or-
there's options. We had reached out to this vendor just to give us some ideas, other communities they've worked with, and they really built off of some things that have been installed in other places. And to some extent, there is an opportunity to kind of work across these examples. Customization is practically limitless. Practically.
Well, then what about purple sign? No, I'm just kidding. Blue's fine. I agree with blue.
This vendor told us, we did ask for frames around the signs and whatnot. For some reason, the vendor said that those signs can't be produced with frames.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. And we also found that Fimeo was too small on the signs on the left.
Yes, I agree with you.
And
Yeah.
they said the finial couldn't be increased, so I don't know about that, but.
Yeah, and there are other vendors as well. It's just, with the scope of work that we've been pushing forward, we reach out to a few vendors. We usually find that some of them are very responsive, some of them not so much. So this is one of the responsive vendors that we were kind of working with, brainstorming.
What I do like about that fourth pole or sign is that the street sign, it continues past the pole. Like there's that little
Yeah, the tail on the back.
the
a little different.
tail. Yeah, I do like that. I wish that had the third one had the tail, if you will.
And I think it's also a function of how much distance there is between the sign on top and the sign on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So if we did that, you'd probably want to have some separation, or else they'd
Yep.
be running into each other.
Yeah. You're gonna get me a tail?
Plus, the spacing between the signs allows for the brackets. And it sounds like most of you don't care for brackets, but if you did want to consider brackets, there are others that are not as ornate as these.
Do you have what you need?
Yeah, we can, this is good feedback.
Okay.
I didn't expect there to be like, this is definitely what we want to do. This is kind of one of those open-ended books that is really, it doesn't impact anything else in the design. To some extent, as we're getting into budget discussions, we might end up making decisions just based on what is practical with the budget.
I mean, I think for the most part, you guys like number 4, just get kind of rid of the doodads for the most part and try to work with what we have. And, with respect to that tail that we were referring to on number 4-ish, number right, maybe try to find an image that represents Fairport, like a image of the lift bridge or something that kind of break that up and just have some type of brand there. Pardon me? Something like that, so we can,
The lift bridge or the old graphic for the packet boat.
okay, got it.
And actually, one thing that might be, as you're going through it, whether it's with us or on your own, having these along with the light posts that we're using, because then, maybe want to make sure that we have at least some sort of a consistent aesthetic between, the shapes and the bases, et cetera.
Yeah, I think these currently complement our light posts that we'll be putting on the project, the ones on like number 4. That's what you're saying? Yeah, they do. They have a kind of a raised base like that. And they're very similar, if not the same, as the one we put on Lift Bridge Lane East. So it has a lot of those features.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is one of the aspects of the signage that we have been looking to pursue, cohesiveness of the style. So with the round stock black posts, standard street signs on most highway projects that we work on are just the square tube with all the holes in them, and they just put some bolts on it, put your green signs up. So pursuing something that gets us a little bit more style with the black round stock, whether we do bases, whether we do the decorative signs, that is going to be something we try to prioritize.
Okay.
Can we just clarify, you said Village Landing to Parse Ave. How about Village Landing to south of Church Street? Are they getting new lights that are gonna look like this too? And signage that's gonna look like this too?
Yeah, they'll be getting, so we like to think about this project in 3 sections. It's the beginning of the project, south of Church Street, up to Village Landing up to Parse, and then Parse to the end of the project. And the two ends of the project are very similar. So we will be doing new street trees, filling in the open spaces. We're going to be doing new sidewalk. The lights will be extended all the way to the project
Just checking.
limits. Yep. Yeah, so there'll be portions of the design that go throughout the entire project, and then portions of the design that are limited to the business district. And signage is one of those ones, as Adam had mentioned, we can kind of treat as like a hierarchy, where we really focus our efforts on the business district and do that as decorative as we can, and lower our priorities as we move outside of the center.
Any more questions or comments from the board? You good? Okay. Thank you so much. You didn't have anything else that we
No.
had to discuss, did you?
No,
Okay.
there's still a lot to do with the project, but we're in the home stretch, and this is important information. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for going through this with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay. At this point, we will move on to item number 2, which is the parking demand analysis review. Chris is coming up from Fisher Associates. Jill is sitting. Thank you for coming.
Okay. No, it's good.
No whispering in class.
I see Fisher's.
All right, so we're going to move on from tree grades and talk about parking studies.
Okay.
Please, you have the floor.
Okay. Yes.
I just want to clarify, you're just sharing information. We're not decision-making, you're not proposing changes, you're just sharing all your study stuff.
Yes, so the parking study was done as part of the zoning code update, and this information will be used to inform the parking requirements as we develop the code. So at some point, based on the information, the data that we've gathered here, again, that will inform how the code is written to address parking requirements.
I didn't know if we need any more decisions, but I didn't think so.
I think decisions are done for this evening.
Okay.
Now is listening.
So, yeah, I think you've received the study, so just the point here is to give a brief summary of the study. I would have gone with the Boston grades, by the way.
Thank you, aren't they
Just,
awesome?
I just said to,
Just saying that because that's where you live.
I might be biased by that
I
name.
just
I
said
don't know.
to Tracy, if I wanted to change my mind, is it too late? I think I want to go with Boston.
It's too late.
Okay, all right, I'll be
Not
quiet.
too
Let's
late.
go. It's too late.
Too late.
Okay.
All right, so
We're on to parking.
Heidi's gonna love Boston. They'll just wait for her to get back.
So this study, and what we have is there's 3 main components to it. So the first one is we want to assess the actual utilization of the parking, because parking's one of these things where everybody has sort of an opinion, but it tends to be more of sort of this almost qualitative and subjective opinion. And so we want to have actual data to sort of understand the parking situation. Then we want to look forward, because we know as part of this rezoning, there's likely to be some future development within the downtown. And so we wanted to try and model what the effects of that might be on the parking demand that's needed. And then finally, we have some recommendations. So the study area, which I have the aerial there, we looked at your lots downtown as well as the on-street spaces along Main Street. And I just put there so you can see sort of, it's essentially about a 5-minute walk for the average person to go from sort of the farthest part of the lot up to, and I put it up to the cannery because that's just happens to be what that quarter-mile distance is. So you have, I think it was approximately 850-ish parking spaces, 855 parking spaces, which has a little bit of an approximation because some of the spaces on Main Street are not striped, so there's a little bit of give and take there. And obviously, I think you're all familiar with these lots.
Chris, if I can just add, this is public parking spaces.
Yeah, so this whole assessment was not looking at any of the private lots that exist within the downtown.
Can I ask another question, a follow-on for public parking spaces? So we're talking about Main Street with 29 approximate on street. Did you consider any of the other side streets off of Main Street or just the spots on Main Street?
For this, we just looked at Main Street
Okay.
itself, yeah.
Well, I think Main Street's only where we allow parking year-round, right? Everywhere else, there's no parking, on-street parking between November,
It's
right?
only between 2 a.m. and 2 and 5, Brian?
That's correct. Nowhere in the village can you park past that time in November through, what's it,
April
April
1st.
1?
Even on Main Street?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the entire village.
I think our study area was dictated by a previous study, so we were sort of mimicking the same extents of that. So to do the analysis, what we did was we came out at 2 different times, one in the spring, one in the summer, in June. For each of those time periods, we came out twice during that day, once during lunch, once during the evening time. And then for each of those periods, we did 2 rounds of counts and then averaged them to get more information. Sort of a standard benchmark for like what you sort of want to aim for with parking lots is an 80% utilization. So that generally means that people can come, they can find a spot somewhere in the lot, but but most of them are being used, so it's not underutilized. So it's kind of that sweet spot that we generally look for. And so based upon this first graph, as you can see within the downtown, even during the summer peak time that we looked at, it was well below that 80% utilization. So really the main takeaway from this graph is that considering the downtown as a whole, you have plenty of parking just within the public spaces. That doesn't include, of course, the private lots, as Jill mentioned. So then on the next slide, sort of dig down into that a little bit, because it isn't the same story everywhere in the downtown, just as a whole. So you can look at these graphics that I think kind of show visually. This was looking at the spring. On the left shows the lunchtime period, and on the right, the evening. And so you can see essentially north of the canal in the evenings, that's where the lots get fully utilized, and in some cases beyond fully utilized because people make up spots that aren't officially spots.
120%, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
So you can see north of there, and then it just kind of brings back to what I mentioned earlier. If people are willing to walk 5 minutes or less, for most people, there's plenty of parking right on the other side, right around where we're standing today. Surprisingly, the situation was actually less when we looked. In both of these, I should mention, it was really nice days out. We made sure that we didn't want weather to be a limiting factor if people were visiting the downtown. But again, the lunch, the situation was totally fine. The evening, there actually was more spaces available in the summer evening than when we looked in the spring. I'm not really sure why that would be. I would have expected summer to be higher demand. But regardless, again, the story I think remains relatively the same, that north of the canal, the lots are more well utilized and relatively heavily utilized, but there's always plenty of spare capacity down on the big lots south of the canal. So that was the utilization analysis. So the next big main part that we did was what we called was this hypothetical build out. So what we did here was we looked at properties, and there's a lot of assumptions here that go into this, but we wanted to, again, get sort of a sense for what could we expect over the coming decades, the impact on parking. And I use that word decades intentionally because I think when people look at this, those dark purple ones are the buildings that we modeled as redevelopment. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen all at once. These are properties, the way redevelopment occurs on these lots, it's incremental and it occurs over a number of years. We looked at buildings that were underutilized by different measures. So if it was single story, if there was a lot of spare asphalt around the property, for example, if they were older properties, so if you had something new, then we would assume that it probably would not be redeveloped anytime soon. If it was the public lots, we did not assume those would change, buildings like this, for example. So we came up with what we thought was a reasonable number of around, it was 25 properties then, that we then remodeled with a massing model that's to scale, so we could get a sense for how much development there would be. And even within that, there's a number of assumptions that go into it. We had to make an assumption of how big the units were, and I can't recall what we used off the top of my head. We had to have a different percentages for what the ground floor would be. We assumed it was always going to be mixed-use development. We assumed it was sort of biased towards restaurants, because that seems to be a higher demand use around here. And that's where we kind of get out then this number of 144 new homes, and really only a slight increase in the commercial space, because right now everything's essentially filled up for the most part. You have commercial on your ground floor of all the parcels already. So just a slight increase in the commercial space. So then what we did was we worked with our transportation engineers who have developed this model. So I can't, if you have detailed questions about this model, I'm not the one to answer it. We have the methodology in the report.
Is that with all the formulas?
Yes, I'd be.
Yeah, I skipped that part.
Yeah, I would be very happy to put you in touch with our engineer if you're interested in getting into the weeds on that. The gist of it is they have this model that they've developed actually for the city of Buffalo, for the green code that they have, the form-based code. Their parking strategy actually utilizes this type of model to determine how much parking is needed for each development. We took that concept and just put it and applied it for this broader hypothetical development. And based upon that, it comes out with this number that there would be a demand for approximately 170 parking spaces associated with all of that hypothetical demand that I just showed. And again, I put a note here, but just to, again, reiterate, this isn't 170 spaces all at once. This would come over time, incrementally. And one of the reasons that's important is because we can adapt over the years to changes as needed. If something's working well or not working well, we can always make any adjustments to anything from the form-based code that we're working on to any of the other regulations you have within the village.
And you may not have an answer to this, and that's completely okay. Do you have any idea how long Buffalo has been using the formulas that were there? Is it something that's been around for a while, and there's been an opportunity to see how well that modeling works out?
It's actually been the last couple of years.
Okay.
And there are reports that they've seen developers be quite responsive to this sort of form, because every time you create a parking space, that ranges between $5,000 and $10,000. So they factor that into their development. So they've seen in cities that are using this, specifically Buffalo, that they're getting more mixed-use development because of saying to the developer, hey, you know your development best. What do you feel your requirement is? And it's not that somebody just comes up and says, yep, hey, I've got this commercial space and I have residential space and I'm only going to require 2 parking spaces. Study, it's an actual document that's prepared that outlines exactly what that parking requirement, that demand is for that proposed use.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just Googled real quickly, and it looks like it was adopted in 2017, the green code. So I think they've been using it since around then.
I was just curious
Yeah,
because, as over time you start to get some experience with the analysis, and then you start to go, okay, this was a correct assumption, this is not such a correct, and maybe we need to adjust this.
Yeah.
I was just curious how it's working out for them.
Yeah,
That's all.
And I'd be happy to put in touch with if you
It's
want to
okay.
have the discussions.
No,
Okay.
it was just a question.
So in terms of the recommendations, it wasn't solely focused on what's relevant to the park, to the zoning code, but we had a few different categories. So one of the categories was, you have enough supply, and this is something we see often, but what you need, or what could be helpful, is better management of your existing supply. And there's a number of strategies that we outlined in the report for consideration. Some of these are, I think, longer term, some of these might be shorter term, some of them you might decide are not particularly relevant. I put the picture on the bottom because having done the counts, I didn't even realize that there was a lower, the first time I went out there, a lower parking lot, because you can't really tell. It's not very well signed. So I think that's an opportunity for people to, for relatively low hanging fruit, to improve that.
And that is currently shared parking with the apartments across the street.
The other sort of big category of this is this concept of transportation demand management. And so this is a concept that is, if you're familiar, it's essentially part of it is how do you use your existing spaces better? So one aspect of that is this concept of shared parking. I think one kind of classic example is for a church, for example, often uses most of its parking spaces on a Sunday. The rest of the days it's relatively empty. So if you have a church, can come to an agreement with a restaurant or a bar or a brewery that needs it more on the weekends or in the evenings, then there's that opportunity for that shared parking arrangement. The other side of TDM is incentivizing people to take other modes of transportation. Part of it is, I think, the streetscape conversation you just had is relevant to that, making it easier, more pleasant to walk. I think making it easier and safer to bike is another important strategy. Obviously not maybe in the depths of winter, but other times of year it could be. And then there's some other strategies, some of which are more and less sort of relevant to the village context. And so you have to take those strategies and tailor them. Generally, they are considered to be sort of a menu of options rather than a one-size-fits-all for each development. And then finally, there's the zoning. And so one of the main concept is this concept of essentially right-sizing the parking requirements. Donald Shoup is kind of this famous researcher, if you're familiar with him. And he has this sort of just this great presentation that I listened to once when he came to Boston. And essentially, so many parking requirements were just set so arbitrarily. And then one community copies another one, and there's sort of snowballs, and there's really not much logic to it. It's not backed up on demand. That was actually part of why the Buffalo Green Code example is intended to be what is the actual demand, not just some arbitrary number. And so often the requirements are set too high to meet demand. And so reducing those requirements or eliminating them entirely, especially in a downtown area where you have plenty of parking, is a recommended strategy. The flip side is having maximums. So there are some situations, and it tends to be, I find, with larger chain retailers, they have these formulas for what they want, and they tend to be the parking needs for like Christmas or something like that one time a year when you need a lot of parking, and the rest of the time they have an oversupply. So having maximums can help deal with that. There might be opportunities to include in the code bike parking as requirements for certain developments. And then the final point, which I think I mentioned earlier, but essentially this is something that needs to be continually monitored and adapted over the years to adjust to changing considerations. I think that might be all I have. Sorry if I went really fast.
That's okay. Can you go back to that last slide?
Yeah.
See, when you're getting there, what's fun is actually the Friday after Thanksgiving, hop on social media. There's a whole thing that a group of people that take pictures of parking lots on Black Friday, not even full.
Not anymore. So, Jill, this is a question, I think, for you, and maybe, so, there are some policy recommendations that, and some recommendations throughout this study that talk about how do we do better wayfinding? How do we do a better job of communicating where there's available parking? Do you think that at some point in time in the future that you'll have some suggestions to bring to the board of here's some options that you could consider to try? I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, because I really am. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that's something we can definitely do. I think part of it is it has to be a joint effort between the community and obviously business owners. So, you know, this study I think is a great launching point for that discussion with perhaps the partnership and the Merchants Association to say, hey, we've got this data that says during these hours, these parking lots tend to be more full. But maybe if you can direct your patrons to the landing parking lot, they'll have an easier time walking, and they get to walk by these really cool stores. You know, one of the stores that's new to the community, Mescalata, has put a real effort into changing up the windows, right? So you're not walking by bland, boring places. You get to walk by these great, unique places. So it's not a boring walk, and it's a 5-minute walk. And part of Chris mentioned in the study is that when we go to Eastview Mall, to walk across the mall, it's 6 to 7 minutes, and we don't think twice about that. So it's all relative, right? And I think that we're really lucky in Fairport that the walk is interesting.
I park at the outside edge of Parrington Wegmans a lot of times, but I'm walking all the way through the store to the very back where the creamer is that I want. That's probably the equivalent of walking a good chunk of our main street. And people,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very true. And, you know, one of the recommendations too is to increase the opportunities for shared parking, transit, and of course, bike parking. So those are important things that I think are part of that whole discussion. So it's not necessarily where can I park my vehicle, but how can I get to the village? We have 8
Yeah.
transit stops in a short, I think it's 3/4 of a mile area. So 8 transit stops, that's significant. We have, you know, we're discussing right now the potential of requiring bike parking when you're proposing a new use. So there are other means to get to the village and travel around the village besides just vehicle.
I think a big part of it is sort of the perception of where there's the parking. And, you know, the technology, I think, for exterior lots isn't as good as right now garages, but I'm told that they're getting better. But there are places, so if you can imagine that Mayo Clinic sign, if it said, hey, lot A, you know, plenty of spaces, and this lot, it's already
Yeah.
full, don't bother circling around this lot here. I think that reduces that
that was when I was
uncertainty.
in downtown Galway. And it's like building after building, and there's only a parking garage every once in a while, and it's like, oh, there's 12 spots in there. Let's go find a spot in there.
Yeah, that I think that the reduction of uncertainty really helps people sort of mentally with that aspect.
Jason and I have been visiting college campuses, and when you sign up for your visit, they send you an app, and you have to actually reserve your parking spot in some of the college campuses.
There are a lot of communities now where you pay by app for parking, and that was another recommendation that was noted within the study to explore different means of, again, parking not being free. It's something that we're not, in some places we're accustomed to, and in others we're not. So when you're charging for parking, that the study notes that those funds can be dedicated for beautification of the parking lot, maintenance of the parking lot. So there's different opportunities with that as well. One of the things that I do want to note is that the study, again, looked at just the public parking spaces. When we consider all of the parking available in our business area, we have 21 acres of parking. So if we're being very conservative and thinking about 100 spaces per acre, that's potentially 2,100 parking spaces. And we have 2,204 residential properties. So we're almost providing 1 parking space per residential property in the village. And that doesn't include on-street parking.
Yeah, pricing
did
parking
include
isn't,
That is private.
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm gonna, Trustee Briggs, do you have any questions or comments that you wanted to ask?
Not at this time. I think once the team makes recommendations and comes up with some stuff to present, it would be a time to, this is like our background knowledge to be able to ask really great questions as to how the working team came up with their recommendations.
Oh, well, the recommendations as part of the study are directly from Fisher. So this is a study that's separate outside of any recommendations from the zoning working group. This information was presented to the zoning working group so that they were aware of the recommendations that were coming out of this study. So this is, oh gosh, I don't know what a good analogy for what this study is. This is sort of inside the box, but sort of outside the box. Again, this is to inform how those parking requirements will be drafted. And of course, you'll see that when we present the draft of the zoning code. We'll hit on those highlights of what are the significant changes. And I anticipate that as a direct result of this study, that we'll have a different parking section than we do currently.
Go ahead.
I know OSED also had a parking study done, but more for just the north side of the village.
Correct.
And I heard the presentation on that study way back, I think, was it like a year ago now? And if I'm remembering correctly, the recommendations from this study very much mirror the recommendations from that study.
And also from the 2010 study that was done originally, it's some of the same conversations. So parking hasn't significantly changed. It's the development in the village that has changed. But keep in mind that a lot of these buildings that we've seen new uses go into are pre-existing buildings. So they've been there forever and likely built without parking. And, you know, I've had conversations with my colleague. Imagine like this great place that you like to go for the holidays, or when you think of like this holiday village, those likely can't be built in any community because of parking requirements. So that's something to be considerate of too, is how do we, and I'm getting off base a little bit, Chris, so I apologize, but when I talk about writing a zoning code, imagine that all of Fairport burns down. How are you crafting code to allow it to be rebuilt as is? And that's where the character-based code comes in. And that's where the discussion of parking requirements come in, because again, many of our buildings predate any sort of discussion about parking.
Do you have any more, Trustee Mishler? You okay for right now? Yeah. Okay. Adam, do you have any questions?
No, I just appreciate everything that went into it. Actually, and I actually really love the diagrams that show the usage at different times of the day, right? Because that's another integral aspect to this, and I really and I appreciate how you laid out that just because when you park you're not paying doesn't mean that somebody somewhere else is not paying for it, right? You're either paying for it for, you know, the cost of your food or your rent or your mortgage. It's just being offloaded in a different way. So I think, you know, all these different things are coming together to help us figure out what this right balance is moving forward, you know, in the village. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're the High Cost of Free Parking by Donald Shoup.
Shoupie
Oh, can I add one more thing? When I was in Toronto a couple weeks ago, they replaced just a few parking spaces with all bike parking spaces. So they would fit like 5 or 6 bike racks within a parking spot. Because I know, you know, Dick Waite and they were talking about like finding actual physical locations for the bike racks. But if we, you know, remove one car parking spot and replace that with bike spaces was really.
Yeah, that's the strategy.
It made perfect sense to me when I saw it. I was like, this is.
In Boston, that's what they did.
Yeah,
And
okay.
at first, you know, there was the concern about the adjacent businesses, but they actually loved it because instead of having one car park, you had now 10 bikes,
10 bikes,
parked
right.
in front of their business. So it ended up being a positive for them as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It just seemed like a really good use of space, because as the presentation prior to this one, you know, finding those locations for those, for all of this, I mean, car and bike, right, is the tricky thing that we're up against. So
I think
I really
definitely
love that idea.
there's the potential with that. I think there's also the potential, as we mentioned, to require bike parking on private property when somebody comes in with the proposal for use. So that's an option
Build that
as
into
well.
the code.
Yeah, I think we got to see a lot of unique uses of parking spaces during COVID, because if you recall, some municipalities were allowing people to set up seating for their restaurant or we turned it into parklets. So there's, I think, a transformation in the public of using parking spaces for things other than vehicles.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I just had to add that one more thing.
My favorite part was all the formulas. I'm just kidding. No, thank you. I think it was very, very helpful, and the summary was really helpful and useful for all of us. Does anybody else have any last questions or comments?
This document is obviously on our website, because I think this is really great information for our business owners and.
So here's my opportunity for you guys to hear
Okay.
how I do things. So I don't put any, it's on
Yes,
E-code.
right.
I don't post it on the zoning code update page until after the village board has seen it.
Okay.
So tomorrow morning, this will be up on the zoning code update page with a link, obviously, to this presentation, a recording of the village board meeting. And then I also distribute it to the land use board meetings, land use board members, and then anybody that would like the link to it, they can most definitely email me or call me, and I will provide that to them, because this is great information. Chris, you did a great job.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sure I'll be seeing y'all soon. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Don't forget how to get here. Thanks, Chris. Ginny, are you heading out? Because I just wanted to catch up with you for 1 minute. But if you have to go, go. I'll send you an email. Okay. All right. So that was it for the parking demand analysis review. Item number 3 is upcoming meetings. There's a village board meeting. This is not right.
No, right.
When's our next meeting? It's Monday, December
9th.
December 9th. Thank you. Monday, December 9th, 6 p.m. this room. The village board work session tentatively is Monday, December, John, do you have your calendar?
It'll be the 23rd.
The 23rd. We'll see if that happens or not. But it would be at 6 p.m. in this room. And are we doing the executive session? Do you guys want to pause it and put a pin in it? And
I could pin it, I'm a little brain
I
dead.
think that I got the impression everybody was a little bit,
Yeah. it's
and
been a
Brian's
long day.
not at 100% tonight either. So we will.
And Heidi
We cool?
contributes, it'd be nice
Yep.
if she could be here in
So we'll
person.
pause item number 4. We're gonna put that aside till the next agenda. And real quick announcements. I'll give everybody their one quick. I have on November 20th, we did the ribbon cutting for Design Space Studios on Main Street. Brianna Thering is the owner of this woman-owned business that has moved to our village. We're really excited to have them, and that's it for me. Adam, do you have anything?
Yeah, we have on December 5th with Bill Perret, our town historian, a little bit of history related to the First Congregational United Church of Christ and the Fairport Parenton community. That's it. Be right here, again, December 5th at 6 p.m.
Emily, do you have anything?
All those who came out, I believe, on Saturday morning to put up all the Christmas decorations and holiday decorations. Thank you.
And Tracy?
And Saturday, the Public Arts Committee got a jump on avoiding all the holiday rush and whatever, so we actually did our yearly retreat and planning session now.
Great,
So
great.
that was on Saturday.
With that, I'll wind things up. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Trustee Mishler?
Second.
By Trustee Banowski, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for everyone who joined us, whether you were live in the room or whether you were remote on YouTube or Facebook. Have a great evening. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Village Hall is closed on Thursday and Friday.